in the endowment. That is what I disagree with. He does not establish that. He simply shows that through the 1830s, the ball of wax was starting to roll. It was getting going here. But even the brethren recognized. They even recognized after Joseph Smith gave him the endowment at Nauvoo that it wasn't quite correct and it wasn't totally complete. And Brigham Young carried on the work all the way on into the Salt Lake Valley when they got to Utah and built the temple there. It's a fascinating concept here. Brigham Young taught that the Latter-day Saints were forced to leave Kirtland and its temple before the sanctuary could be completed with the font and the Nauvoo style of endowment given for the living and the dead. The Nauvoo style of endowment. It wasn't the Nauvoo endowment, however. He says that on page 93. He's trying very hard. He shows the revelation of D&C 128, D&C 110, D&C 124 in 1838. He says that we may obtain this new pattern in connection with the idea of the Far West Temple. It would be used for prayer. One part of the house shall be set apart for a place of worship, of course, where we shall invoke our God for revelations, that by revelations we may obtain knowledge unto eternal life. They're talking about the keys of the kingdom, or powers of the holy priesthood, the keys of Elijah, which enable the possessor to have no difficulty in obtaining a knowledge of facts in relation to the salvation of the children of men, the living and the dead. The full keys of Elijah. In mid-March 1839, Joseph wrote a letter, I never have had the opportunity to give the saints the plan that God has revealed to me. Well, that was by 1839. He didn't get that chance until after he became a Freemason. And he incorporated those Freemasonic elements, some of them, into the endowment to teach the endowment. The symbols in the right are not the endowment. They're the vehicle to teach the endowment. So I think this is very interesting how Brown is setting this up. And here's his punchline. Here's his whole punchline. And then, of course, he brings it all the way up to 1841 to show that the Nauvoo Temple was to be a place for proxy baptism, worship, endowment, the revelation of God's laws, and the manifestation of all the ordinances. And then 15th of November 1841, another epistle about the Nauvoo Temple. In this house, they said, all the ordinances will be made manifest, and many things will be shown forth, which have been hid from generation to generation. This is a line upon line unfolding of the endowment. This is not the full endowment yet, and it's 1841. They were all Freemasons first before they got the full endowment in the temple several weeks later. He says, by examining the above timeline, this is on page 98, it becomes obvious that the Nauvoo-era temple ordinances and doctrines did not suspiciously materialize after Joseph Smith became a Freemason. And none of us have ever said that. He's fighting a straw man argument. That's his fear. Is all this, Joseph had nothing, and all of a sudden he became a Freemason, and voila, there it is. That's how I'll do the endowment. That's not how it works at all. We've never said otherwise. I've never seen a Mormon Freemason who says this. No one of us say this. This is Brown's assumption. And of course he's saying that because that's what the environmental critics are saying. Now, if he's responding to them, then this is okay, but he's still assuming too much against Freemasonry. Brown is taking it too far. He's gone on the other end of the pendulum. The critics say, yeah, Joseph Smith that's where he got it from, was his natural environment. Brown is saying he got none of it from his environment, he got it all by revelation, and he's trying to establish that. My argument is he did get the endowment by revelation, but he also incorporated some of the elements of the ritual in Freemasonry to teach that endowment to the saints. That doesn't make the endowment phony. That doesn't threaten the holiness and sacredness and validity of the endowment any more than it wrecks Freemasonry. It is the natural process with which Joseph Smith learned, line upon line, by the inspiration of God, to have the endowment taught in the best manner everyone could understand. That would be my interpretation. Brown mentions on page 109 and 110 and 108 several of the brethren who participated in the endowment as well as Freemasonry. Heber C. Kimball, Brigham Young also received the endowment rituals that were given there to priesthood holders. He's talking about the Kirtland Temple. But the endowment at the Kirtland Temple was not the same endowment as at Nauvoo. This was an introduction. Not everything was given and done and completed in Kirtland. He says Heber C. Kimball had been initiated into Freemasonry in 1823. He had previously also received the endowment of the Kirtland era. Matt Brown is using the word endowment. Now, to a Latter-day Saint today, when you say endowment, you're thinking of our today's endowment. And this is the assumption I see Matt Brown laboring under. He's trying to show that there was no Freemasonic elements incorporated into the endowment at Kirtland. Well, of course there wasn't. Joseph Smith wasn't a Freemason then. All of the information of the endowment, the type and kind and style of endowment that was had at Kirtland, was preparatory. And these are where the differences between the endowment and Freemasonry reside. There was very little Freemasonic symbolism in Kirtland, that's true. He's calling it the endowment. It was not the full endowment as we understand it today. That's important to understand. Newell K. Whitney received the endowment ordinances associated with the Kirtland Temple, he says. He had become a Freemason long before while residing in the state of Ohio. That's on page 110. So the idea, and then he says on page 112, it should be noted that Elder Richards labeled these proceedings at Kirtland as the ancient order of things and also the order pertaining to the Ancient of Days. And the prophet was publicly teaching this primordial backdrop for the Nauvoo Temple ordinances as early as 5th of October, 1840, 17 months before he became a Freemason. See, he is trying to show that it all came by revelation. And I agree with that. It did. He's also trying to say that, therefore, eliminates any influence of Freemasonry, and that's where I disagree with Brother Brown. It doesn't necessarily have to eliminate Freemasonry. It didn't. Joseph Smith incorporated some Masonic elements to help him get the teachings about the endowment across to the saints in the Nauvoo Temple. So his ideas, his assumptions are that the revelation takes out Freemasonry. It does not take out Freemasonry. It establishes the importance of the endowment, is how the revelation of the endowment does, which is proper, of course. I can't disagree with any of that. Brigham Young said, in fact, that this is not arranged right, but we've done the best we can at this point. Now, this was the St. George Temple that Brigham Young dedicated in 1877, and he reminisced back to 1842. Joseph had given the information, and Joseph told Brigham Young, sorry, I said it was Brigham Young, but Joseph Smith told Brigham Young, this is not arranged right, but we've done the best we can under the circumstances, and we'll just have to take the matter at hand and organize and systemize all these ceremonies. It was a process. It wasn't just dropped in their lap. They had to learn what to include, what to exclude, and so on and so forth. This is precisely where many of the elements of Freemasonry came into play, to give the principal themes of the endowment across and understand. And then what Brother Brown does is so fascinating. On page 113, he says, 9 men who were Freemasons received the Nauvoo Temple endowment from a man who was also a Freemason. And there was no mistaking that there were some resemblances between the two rituals, for Heber C. Kimball wrote just a month after being endowed, there is a similarity of priesthood in Masonry. And yet no incredulous cry about bootlegging or fraud rang out from this group against the prophet.